So this is it. This is the OnePlus 6, the successor to the OnePlus 5T, which was arguably really popular and came out only 6 months ago. Now it's got a starting price of $529, and at that price, you get the top of the line processor with 6 gigs of RAM. But is it worth it? The honest and simple answer is, heck yeah, it is. But if you're like me and you're here for the details, stick around, because we're about to get right to it. Let's do it. Okay, so before we get into the full-blown details, we're gonna get paper specs out of the way just so you kind of know what you're working with before we even start. Let's go with processing first. So under the hood, you get the latest and greatest from Qualcomm, the Snapdragon 845. Now that's paired with either 6 gigs or 8 gigs of RAM, depending on the color and storage. Now, that also comes with the Adreno 630 GPU. In terms of storage options, you get 64 gigs, 128, or 256. The 128 and 256 are going to be your options that come with 8 gigs of RAM. 6 gigs is always paired with the 64 gig option. In terms of button placements and ports, on the right side of the phone, you have your power button, and now you also have the alert slider, which used to be on the left. On the left side of the phone, you have the volume rocker sitting by itself. On the bottom of the phone, you have your headphone jack, I'm so glad it's here, USB-C for charging, and a single firing speaker. And on the back of the phone, you have a rear-mounted fingerprint sensor, which is still incredibly fast. In terms of the front display, 6.28 inches, full HD, and it's AMOLED. Now, glass doesn't stop there, it's also on the back of the phone. I think that just about does it for the build. So let's elaborate on build quality and materials used for a little bit. Now, like I said previously, OnePlus opted to go with glass on the back of the phone as opposed to aluminum. Now, glass has its benefits. For one, it feels ultra premium, and that's what OnePlus was going for whenever they made the 6. They wanted you to feel like you're holding a super premium phone. And they really get that across, especially with the way they curve the glass on the back of the phone. When it sits in your hand, it feels super, super premium. But it's not perfect. For one, it's really slippery. My OnePlus 6 is the mirror black finish, and I felt like I was holding a bar of soap every time I was using that phone. It was constantly slipping in between my fingers. I risked dropping it a couple times, but fortunately, I try my best to hold onto my phones as tight as possible when they're in my hand because, and that takes me to my second point, glass is very easily scratched and damaged. So if it rubs up against something in your pocket, rubs up against your keys, falls on the ground, you take the risk of scratching it, cracking it, shattering, whatever the case may be. Glass is just not as durable as aluminum. So while it does feel super premium, you also kind of lower the durability of the phone. So there's kind of a trade-off there. So we're gonna go ahead and bring it to the front of the phone now and talk about the display. Like I said at the beginning of the video, 6.28 inches, and it's full HD, but it's AMOLED. And it's the same AMOLED panel, or at least really similar to the AMOLED panel they use in the OnePlus 5T. Now, I know some of you out there may be disappointed that they didn't go with OLED, but to be completely honest with you, this is probably one of the best HD panels I've seen out there. Colors are vibrant and really accurate. Outdoor visibility is excellent. There's no color shift whenever you tilt the phone off axle. Viewing angles are great. So overall, the display is really good. And I know they didn't go with OLED, but I promise you, you won't be disappointed. But let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room. And it's a big elephant, and it's the notch. Sits right there on top of the display. You cannot miss it. Here's how I feel about the notch. My daily driver is an iPhone 10, so it's not like I'm not used to having a notch, right? But my secondary phone was the Pixel 2 XL until this review period started, and now I'm using the OnePlus 6. It took me all but, I want to say 45 minutes to maybe get used to the fact that the phone had a notch. Two cool things though, for those of you out there, especially the OnePlus diehards that were really disappointed that they went the route of implementing a notch. Believe me, I was too, especially when I saw the first renders, I was really upset. But cool thing number one, OnePlus has a software feature built in that lets you hide the notch if you really want to. All you have to do is go into your display settings, and then there's a setting under display settings for the notch, and you can select to turn the notch off. Now, since it's got an AMOLED panel, it essentially makes the right and the left area of the notch super black, just cutting out those pixels, and it makes the phone look like it has no notch, just really slim bezels on the top and the bottom. So that's cool. Another thing, Android's kind of started to notice, or newer versions of Androids are starting to become more optimized for the notch, right? So app developers are starting to realize that the notch is a trend. So they're starting to optimize their apps to work with phones that have that notch. So I noticed that whenever I was watching YouTube videos, it was never going into the notch area. Even whenever I zoomed to fill the screen, it was just kind of taking up whatever was left without going into the notch area. So you don't have this weird looking video or a strange aspect ratio whenever you're watching something. And even something like browsing the web in Chrome, they didn't try and put strange information on the top right and the top left. It all kind of sat underneath the notch. And the two areas of the notch are really used for just the time and your battery percentage and whatever icons you have turned on, like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So Android's optimized for it, and OnePlus gives you an option for it. So you have a lot of choices if you don't like the notch. So the build quality and the display are really great stuff. They really are. But let's talk about where OnePlus really won me over, and that's with the performance and the software. So like I said at the beginning of the video, regardless, you get a Snapdragon 845 and an Adreno 630 GPU. Now that's either paired with 6 gigs of RAM, which is, I'd say, pretty good, or 8 gigs of RAM, which is absolutely absurd. I'm not really sure why Android should have 8 gigs of RAM, but OnePlus does it anyways. And let me tell you, with Oxygen OS, they implement those 8 gigs of RAM really, really well. Over the course of me using this phone, there was nothing I could do to trip it up. I had tons of apps open. I would switch back and forth between the apps. Nothing could cause the phone to even remotely show one sign of lag. RAM management is really good, so it holds a lot of apps open in the background, so you can kind of seamlessly switch back and forth. You don't have to worry about too many apps reloading themselves if it's been a while since you've opened it, so that's great. And I know what some of you may be thinking, hey, you've only had the phone for like a week and a half, almost 2 weeks. Of course it's going to feel that way. Every phone does. Well, I still have my OnePlus 5T, which is going on 6 months old now. Now I know that's still not too long, but that phone feels just as snappy as this phone does, at least for a 2017 flagship. Granted, this one has a newer processor, but the OnePlus 5T still feels incredibly snappy, and I don't expect the 6 to get slow anytime soon at all. Now let's talk about software. The OnePlus 6 is already running Android 8.1 Oreo with the May security patch, which is about as updated as it gets for the time being. Now, I know the Pixel is on Android P, but OnePlus has already promised the OnePlus 6 will be on the Android P beta. So it seems like they're taking software updates really seriously. Besides software updates, Oxygen OS as an operating system is really starting to mature. You're starting to notice that apps are starting to work really well. There's a general feeling of cohesiveness whenever you're using this phone. It doesn't really seem like there are too many things missing. And OnePlus does really well with adding really useful features without bloating up the software. Two of my favorite ones are gaming mode, which kind of mutes notifications and enhances the overall performance of the phone whenever you're playing games, so you have a ridiculously smooth experience. Played a couple games while I was using it and no issues whatsoever. And two is reading mode, which essentially turns your display to something like an e-reader, like a Kindle, to where it's not harsh on your eyes at all. And you can sit there and kind of get lost in the fact that you're reading an ebook or reading some sort of text that you enjoy without getting that eye strain of staring at your phone for a few hours. So yeah, the performance is really good. OnePlus has always jam-packed their phone with the top-end specs at a really low price, but now they're managing to pair the operating system with that hardware, and it's creating an incredibly cohesive experience, which, like I said, really won me over in terms of using this phone. It's incredible. So if there's one category of the OnePlus 6 that I would say it's mediocre, it would probably be the battery life. So it has a decently sized battery, 3,300 milliamp hours. And during my review period, I was consistently getting over 4 hours of screen on time. If I really, really pushed it, I could maybe just inch towards 5 hours of screen on time. But that's with not too much heavy usage. If you spend a lot of your day listening to podcasts or using the phone for navigation, watching videos, gaming, things like that, something that can really task the battery while the phone's working to stay as optimal as possible, you'll notice that you may need to top it off before the day is over. Fortunately, dash charging is back, and it's still one of the fastest wire charging methods, if not the fastest wire charging method in the market. Now, a lot of people got really excited whenever they found out that there was a glass back on the phone because they figured, hey, maybe it comes with wireless charging. Unfortunately, it does not come with wireless charging. I'm assuming OnePlus did that because they wanted to keep the phone cost low. But you really shouldn't feel too disappointed because, like I said, dash charging is phenomenal. So it comes with a huge power brick and the red super thick USB-C cable, and you'll need both of those in order to do dash charging. Fortunately for you, they both come in the box at no extra charge. Now, the reason why that wall adapter is so big, and this is also another benefit of dash charging, all the technology needed to regulate the current speed and regulate the temperature is built into the brick, as opposed to most phones building it into the phone. So while other phones you'll notice get really warm while they turbocharge, the OnePlus 6 and any other phone that uses dash charging stays relatively cool even if you use it while it's dash charging. And that's all because of that technology built into the brick. So dash charging is still, in my opinion, the fast charge standard, and I'm so glad that it's here on the OnePlus 6, and you get it for free. There's no extra cost. So no wireless charging, but I think you'll live. So let's talk about cameras, and we'll go ahead and start with the front camera. Now the front selfie camera, there's only one, there's not two. It's a 16 megapixel camera with, I believe, f2.0 aperture. Yeah, should be f2.0, and it can record videos in 1080p. So this is actually a video sample from the phone. Now granted, this is with really optimal lighting conditions in the studio, so your results may vary a little bit. But with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into back camera samples. So we're going to talk about the rear cameras, and this has always been an interesting topic whenever it comes to OnePlus phones. For the past 2 to 3 phones they've released, it seems like the rear cameras have always been their Achilles heel. That one thing that prevents it from being a super, super awesome phone. This year with the OnePlus 6, I'm happy to say that the cameras are really, really good. They're not the best on the market, but they're really, really good. And there is 2 of them again this time around. So this time they've given us a 16 megapixel primary lens with a 20 megapixel secondary lens. And it seems like every time they release a new phone, that secondary lens function changes. So when they released the 5, the secondary lens was a telephoto lens. And it was okay. When they released the 5T, they decided to change it up, and the 5T was a low light lens, strictly dedicated to low light. And it was okay. This year around with the 6, they've decided to ditch both of those ideas, and the secondary lens on the 6 is nothing but a depth sensor to help the phone take better portrait mode shots. Now, I didn't take too many portrait mode shots with the 6, but I will say that it produces good results. I'm not going to put it on the same level as the Pixel 2 XL, but it does take good portrait mode photos. In terms of just standard photos though, this phone can definitely compete with a lot of the higher end flagships out there. You may not beat the higher end flagships, but you can definitely get some really, really incredible results. In my time using it, it took great shots, color reproduction was excellent, and even with some shots that were a little more difficult, that really messed with dynamic range, the OnePlus 6 was able to pull in those shots and get a really detailed photo. And as far as video goes, this is where things get interesting. So it can record video in 1080p up to 60 frames per second, and it can record in 4K as well. But the part that really intrigued me was super slow-mo video. You got 2 options for super slow-mo video. You got 1080p at 240 frames per second, which we do have a video sample of that, and you have 720p at 480 frames per second, and we have 2 examples of that. So get ready. This is going to be the collage of photos, videos, slow-mo videos, whatever it is, you name it. It's coming at you right now, so enjoy. tell you what, those super slow-mo videos, those are something else. But we've reached that point in the review, guys. It's time to figure out if the OnePlus 6 is really worth the money that you go out there and work hard for every single day. Now, like I said at the beginning, the entry-level OnePlus 6 with 6 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of storage starts at $529. Now you can up it to 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage, and that'll set you back $579. And you can even go up to 256 gigs of storage with the same 8 gigs of RAM, and that'll set you back $629. I strongly believe the OnePlus 6 is worth it at any of those price points. Let's talk about where we are with smartphones right now, guys. We're in the era of $1,000 smartphones. The iPhone 10, if you want the 256, it's $1,149 before tax and before Apple Care. The Pixel 2 XL is close to $1,000 after tax whenever it first came out. Galaxy S8 Plus and even the Note were in those $800 to $900 smartphone ranges, right? So to have a phone that does so many things at close to half the cost, it's absolutely incredible. In terms of bang for your buck value, you'll be hard pressed to find a phone on the market that can keep up with the OnePlus 6. Now, with that being said, it's not a perfect phone, right? There are some omissions that OnePlus had to take in order to keep the phone at this price point. One, it's not officially IP rated. So OnePlus says the phone can take a splash, but you should never submerge the phone. They say it's good for daily accidental splash activities, like if you get caught in the rain while you're talking on the phone, or maybe you spill some water on the phone and get the phone away from the liquid really quick. But it doesn't have an official IP rating, so you shouldn't go dunking it into water as a party trick. Second thing, no wireless charging, even though it has a glass back. I mentioned this earlier when we talked about the battery and the charging, but I still think that's a cost-saving measure. And third thing, there's some things the phone just doesn't do all too well. One of them being the speaker. It's one, and it's bottom firing, and we all know how that goes. I mean, you can add as many performance enhancements to the speaker as possible, but one single bottom firing speaker doesn't always cut it. Fortunately, there is a headphone jack, and OnePlus is also planning on releasing some super cool Bluetooth headphones that we will be buying and testing in the studio. So those are kind of your 3 caveats. There aren't too many downsides to this phone, and it has a lot of upsides. So if you're in the market for a smartphone, I would give the OnePlus 6 serious consideration. But that just about does it for me, guys. I'm out of here. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Let us know what you think about the phone in the comment section. Don't forget to share and hit subscribe. And as always, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace. It's basically a depth sensor. I did not take too many portrait photos with the 5T. Oh, I said 5T. Dang it. More quality flagship phone. I don't like that. Curves the back on the phone. Oh, that was bad, right? And depending on which finish you get, it can either be slipperier. Well, actually, let's retake that. Big option, respectively. As far as the build of the device goes, you have a 6.28-inch display on the front. Now that is full HD and it's AMOLED. You have Corning. Corning. It's Corning Gorilla Glass.